My name is Esther Whitman. I'm 66 years old, and I've learned over time that silence often speaks louder than explanation. That morning, around 8:15 a.m., I stepped onto the deck of the Seaborn Whisper just as the sun touched the water with its first real warmth. The air at the Charleston Marina smelled like sea salt and lemon oil. I'd wiped down the rails earlier with a little vinegar and warm water, just like my mother used to do when we cleaned silver. The deck sparkled the way I liked it, and inside the kitchen counters were spotless. The coffee pot sat ready, the mugs lined up. Everything had been done just right. I wore my old khakis and a faded denim shirt with sleeves rolled to the elbow. Nothing fancy. The kind of outfit people didn't look at twice. I didn't mind. I wasn't trying to be seen that morning. Not yet. I was wiping a smudge off the stovetop when I heard footsteps on the dock. 2 sets, confident and impatient. My daughter Ashley and her husband Trent right on schedule. I took one slow breath and closed the cloth in the drawer beside me. They came aboard like they owned the place. Trent first in pressed linen and sunglasses, already complaining about the humidity. Ashley followed behind him, one hand gripping her purse, the other holding her phone like it was part of her body. She gave me a quick glance and a nod, nothing more. Trent looked at me, really looked, and said with a smirk, "Still cleaning." He turned to Ashley and chuckled. "Guess some folks don't know when their shift ends." Ashley smiled politely. She didn't say a word. I just stood there for a second, cloth still in hand, and let the words settle between us. Then I smiled. Not the kind of smile you give when you're happy. The kind you give when you've decided it's not worth the argument. I turned back to the counter and adjusted the towel hanging from the handle of the oven. My hands moved slowly, almost rhythmically, checking things that didn't need to be checked. The silverware, the sink, the cabinet hinges. All quiet, all perfect. From the next room, I heard Trent laugh again. He was admiring the entertainment system, commenting on the yacht's details like a man shopping for something he couldn't afford. Ashley gave soft, obliging responses. They made their way to the minibar, and I heard the clink of ice and the soft hiss of a soda can opening. I stepped onto the deck and sat at the far end near the railing. The marina was starting to stir. Another couple climbed aboard a boat across the way. A man with a clipboard walked by and nodded at me. I nodded back. I'd been here all week. They probably thought I was part of the service staff, and maybe I was in a way. I'd made every inch of this boat shine. Every drawer, every cushion, every hidden switch had passed through my hands. Inside, Trent asked where the cleaning lady went. Ashley muttered something I couldn't hear. I watched the water for a while. The wind pulled lightly at the canopy above. My wedding ring, still loose on my hand since Harold passed, glinted in the morning sun. The gold had dulled over the years, but the weight never left. We dreamed of owning a boat, a real one. Not a lake canoe or a little fishing skiff, but something solid, something seaworthy. After he died, the idea wouldn't leave me. So I made it happen, quietly, carefully, and I told no one, especially not Ashley, not because I didn't trust her, but because I wasn't sure she remembered how much she once loved the sea. Before Trent, before the noise. They clattered back into the kitchen. I could hear Trent opening cabinets, muttering about high-end finishes. He joked that we should just find out who owns the place and buy it off them. Get a good deal, since we already know the flaws. I opened the fridge and checked the brunch items I'd prepared the night before. The quiche still looked perfect. I'd baked it myself with extra Gruyere. The fruit bowl had been assembled with care. Even the orange juice was fresh squeezed. All of it waiting like a gift no one realized they'd been given. They thought I was a cleaner who lingered too long, maybe even lonely, maybe just nosy. Let them. I listened to Trent go on, talking about asset classes, boat depreciation, weekend rentals, and ways to talk down an owner. He didn't know I'd already heard every version of that speech in my 38 years with Harold. The real difference between people like Trent and people like me isn't money. It's respect. For things. For work. For people. I picked up the tray, steadying the glasses. It would have been easy to say something, to stop him right there and tell him the truth, but that wouldn't teach him anything, not yet. I brought in the food like nothing had happened. Trent looked impressed. He said it was nice when staff went the extra mile. Ashley smiled and asked if she could take pictures, and I just smiled again. The kind of smile that knows the storm is coming, but waits for the wind to change. I never thought I'd own something like a yacht. Harold and I used to walk past the docks in Booth Bay Harbor and make up names for the boats we'd never touch. He'd point to the sleek ones with chrome details and say that one's for movie stars. I'd pick the little sailboats, the ones with chipped paint and canvas covers, and say that one's ours. It was a game we played for nearly 40 years. When he died, the house felt too still, the corners too sharp, the days too long. I found myself opening old drawers and running my fingers over things we'd kept for no reason. Receipts from vacations, a broken stopwatch, a birthday card from Ashley when she was 7. I wasn't looking for anything, just trying not to disappear inside the quiet. The life insurance money came 2 weeks later. The envelope sat unopened on the table for days. I knew it was there waiting. When I finally opened it, I cried. Not because of the number, but because I knew exactly what to do with it. We never had expensive taste. We lived in the same house for over 30 years. Paid cash for everything. Harold made sure of that. But there was one thing we never stopped dreaming about. A boat. Not a luxury toy. Just something big enough to move to sleep, to breathe out the stress of the world. Something we could take Ashley on. Something with a deck wide enough to hold laughter. I found the Seabourn Whisper listed quietly through a private seller. It was older but well cared for. A compact beauty with warm wood interiors and room for memories. I visited it twice. Both times I wore my wedding band and brought a notebook with Harold's handwriting still scribbled in the margins. It felt like he was there with me. I hired a maritime attorney. He helped me transfer the title into my name, kept the process private, and suggested a quiet marina in Charleston. He was kind. Said it was rare to see someone so certain about a purchase this big. I told him certainty comes from grief, not impulse. He didn't ask further. I didn't tell Ashley. Not because I wanted to keep it from her, but because I wanted to give it to her. The surprise, the look on her face. She used to love the sea so much. When she was little, she'd hold her arms out like wings and lean into the wind, laughing as if the ocean were telling her secrets. I had the interior redone. Nothing fancy, just soft linens and updated lighting. I replaced the old galley fixtures with newer, sturdier ones. I ordered china with pale blue edges that reminded me of fog rolling over the coast. I brought in the compass Harold once gave me on our anniversary. Had it polished, mounted it beside the navigation station. It pointed north always. The security cameras were a late decision. A friend in my church group mentioned a neighbor whose boat was ransacked by a guest's son. I didn't want to believe it could happen, but I also knew Ashley had married a man who liked to test limits. So I installed a system. 8 cameras small, tucked behind vents and light fixtures. They recorded silently just in case. I spent weekends on the boat alone, bringing books, cooking simple meals, playing Harold's old jazz records through the new sound system. I never stayed overnight. It wasn't about living on the water. It was about building something quiet and whole. Something mine. Something for her. I scheduled this weekend months in advance. I told Ashley a family friend had offered us the yacht for a trial weekend. She seemed distracted, more concerned with logistics than the gesture. But I didn't take it personally. Life moves fast when you're not paying attention. What she doesn't know is that every detail of this weekend was planned with care. The brunch menu, the fresh linens, the way the morning light hits the dining nook at exactly 8:15 a.m. I chose all of it, and I chose silence. Because some gifts don't need wrapping. They just need to be witnessed. The lunch table was set just the way I had imagined it. Pale linen napkins, chilled glasses sweating softly in the light, and a platter of grilled vegetables next to slices of fresh sourdough. The sea rocked us gently. Ashley had her sunglasses pushed up on her head, and Trent, as always, held court. He leaned back in his chair and gestured toward the water with his wine glass. "Yachts are such money pits," he said. "But when someone else is footing the bill, why not enjoy it?" He laughed to himself and reached for another piece of bread. Ashley offered a small smile, like a reflex, the kind that happens when you've stopped listening but still want to appear polite. I poured iced tea into her glass and then into his. Trent tapped the edge of his fork against the plate. He said it was a shame the owner wasn't around. Maybe they could strike a deal. He had a buddy who handled marine rentals and could draw up something simple long-term. The way he said it made it sound like he was talking about leasing a used truck. I took a bite of my salad and looked past him out toward the edge of the dock. The sun caught on the brass handrails and scattered across the water like little sparks. Ashley asked if the yacht came with a crew or if it was just the occasional service people. Trent smirked and said the cleaning lady this morning looked like she wanted to move in. Maybe she got attached. Some folks don't know when to let go. Then he turned to me and asked if I was staying nearby or heading off to another boat next. I smiled and told him I hadn't decided yet. Ashley pressed her lips together. She didn't stop him. She never did. She passed the lemon wedges and asked me if I wanted more ice. Her voice was too sweet, the kind of tone people use when they're trying to cover something up. Trent shifted the conversation back to numbers. Slip fees, insurance estimates, cost of teak replacement. He had opinions about all of it. Talked about upgrades and resale value like he'd already added the boat to his asset list. I excused myself to fetch the fruit tart I'd made the night before. While I was in the galley, I leaned against the counter for a moment and closed my eyes. I could still hear his voice upstairs. Confident, casual, like he belonged there. I set the tart in the center of the table, careful not to spill any of the raspberry glaze. Trent complimented the presentation and asked if I catered events too. Ashley laughed more out of habit than humor. I said nothing. I just sat and listened as he laid out his ideas. How he'd approach the owner. How generous he'd be with the right terms. How smart he'd look for getting the deal of the summer. And I smiled again. The kind that hides everything. The kind you wear when you know that someone is digging their own hole. And all you have to do is wait. It was just past 9:15 p.m. when I heard it. A slow, steady dripping from the galley. At first I thought it might be the rain, though the skies had been clear all evening. I walked in and found the sink faucet running in a thin stream, the handle stiff, unresponsive. Water had pooled along the edge of the counter and was beginning to drip onto the floor. I called out that the faucet was leaking. Trent came over in a hurry, all helpful energy and concerned husband routine. He jiggled the handle and shrugged, said these older boats always had their quirks. Probably the cleaning lady tightened it too hard earlier. He looked at me and offered to take a look at it in the morning, maybe save the rental company a bill. I thanked him quietly, nodded, and went back to my cabin. Once I heard their cabin door click shut, I slipped back into the galley, turned on the dim light over the navigation panel, and opened the cabinet just below the microwave. Inside was the small black panel for the internal surveillance system. I'd had it installed months ago, wired directly into the yacht's power. No cloud, no password prompts, just a simple interface and crisp, time-stamped footage. I scrolled back to around 7:45 p.m. and watched camera 4, the one positioned to catch the kitchen area from the upper corner. The moment Trent stepped into view, my stomach turned. He looked around casually at first. Then he opened the bottom drawer, pulled out a multi-tool I kept in the side bin, and crouched next to the sink. With quick, practiced movements, he gripped the base of the faucet and twisted. Hard. He stopped, tested the handle, then twisted again, this time bracing his knee against the cabinet for leverage. I watched silent as the metal bent, and a small spray of water escaped beneath the handle. Trent wiped the area clean with a paper towel and returned the tool exactly where he found it. There was no hesitation, no mistake. He had broken it on purpose. I sat back staring at the screen for a while. Then I copied the footage to a small USB stick I kept in the drawer and slid it into my jacket pocket. I turned off the lights and walked back to my room. I didn't sleep that night. I just waited for morning. By 8 o'clock the next day, the dining table was set with coffee, fresh scones, and peach jam. I placed the iPad at the center of the table and waited. Trent walked in first, looking fresh and confident. Ashley followed, rubbing her eyes. She complimented the smell of the scones. Trent made a joke about how spoiled we were by this rental. Then he turned to me and asked if I'd had any luck with the sink, or if it was still acting up. I looked him in the eye and said it had been handled. Then I tapped the iPad. The screen lit up to the paused footage of Trent crouched by the sink tool in hand. For a moment, no one spoke. I pressed play. The room filled with the faint sound of water and the creak of metal under pressure. Trent's actions played clearly, indisputably. His face, his hands, his smirk when the water started to drip. Ashley's fork clinked against her plate. Trent shifted in his seat, the blood draining from his face. I stopped the video just before he wiped the counter. Then I turned to them both. This yacht belongs to me. I bought it last year. Quietly, carefully, with the money your father left me. I was going to give it to you next spring as a gift. A surprise. But not anymore. Trent opened his mouth, then closed it. Ashley stared down at her plate, eyes glassy. She said nothing. I stood and began clearing the table, not rushing, just moving with purpose. Trent finally found his voice. He said it had been a mistake, that he was only trying to test the fixture, that he thought it was already broken, that I was overreacting. I asked him calmly if testing something usually involved a multi-tool and bracing your foot against the cabinet. He didn't answer. Ashley finally whispered that she was sorry. She didn't know. She really didn't. I believed her. But I also knew she had watched her husband dismiss me, misjudge me, and twist the truth without stepping in. I told them both I didn't want to fight, that they didn't need to pack in a rush, that the marina wouldn't miss them until noon, but that I'd be staying behind, alone. They didn't argue. Trent walked out without another word. Ashley followed behind him, looking smaller than I remembered. Once they were gone, I sat back down at the table next to the quiet iPad. I stared out the window at the harbor. The brass compass on the shelf caught a beam of sunlight and gleamed. North still meant north. Truth still meant truth. And sometimes love means knowing when to stop giving. A week later, the harbor was quiet. The kind of quiet that settles into your bones. I was sitting on the back deck of the Seaborn Whisper with a mug of warm tea and the brass compass Harold gave me on our 30th anniversary. It still pointed north like it always had. Some things don't drift. The envelope had come that morning tucked in with the marina's mail. Ashley's handwriting was shaky but unmistakable. She wrote that Trent was drowning in debt and shame, that he'd never felt like enough, and that pressure twisted something in him. She didn't excuse him. She said she failed too. She let things happen. Let silence speak where love should have. I read the letter twice. Once for the words, once for the parts she didn't say out loud. I folded it neatly and placed it beneath the compass. I didn't cry, not from anger or relief. I just sat with it, letting the sadness settle where it belonged and not a moment longer. I didn't write her back, but I didn't need to. Some love is better lived from a distance. Some peace is earned by not explaining yourself. I leaned back in the deck chair, the wood warm against my arms, the sea stretching wide and quiet in front of me. A gull skimmed the water's surface, barely touching it, and the compass beside me kept pointing north, just like Harold said it would.